Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. January 14, 1942. Under the cover of darkness, a Nigerian flag tugboat silently slips into the harbor at Fernando Po, a small island off the coast of West Africa. The island is controlled by the Spanish, who are ostensibly neutral in World War II, yet their government has allowed the base to be used to refuel and rearm the deadly Nazi U-boat submarine fleet that is ravaging Allied shipping in the North Atlantic. 3 massive resupply barges sit in the harbor, which is bristling with anti-aircraft guns, naval artillery, and at least a battalion of ground troops. Major Gus March Phillips's mission is simple: sneak into the harbor with a small team of elite commandos and steal those 3 barges from under the enemy's nose. Do it without being detected, and get out of there before the Nazis can mobilize enough troops, aircraft, and artillery to smash you to bits. Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am joined today by producer Andrew Jacobs. Andrew, how's it going? Good to have you back on the show.
Good. Glad to be back.
Yeah, so we are kind of doing a little bit of a current event today. Current events.
Not so current events, but it's current for a reason.
Right, yes. So have you seen the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare? It's out in theaters right now.
I have seen it. I am a sucker for Guy Ritchie movies, and so I did go see it, and I will say it's a little over the top. This isn't a Ken Burns documentary version of what happened. It's the Guy Ritchie version, but if you know that going in, I think you'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was kind of my take on it as well. Is it historical? No, not really, but it's pretty fun, and you kind of have to go into it as like, Guy Ritchie doing Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah,
it's kind of the vibe.
It's like, you know what? If you like movies where they kill Nazis, this is a good one for that.
There's a lot of that. A lot of that happens in this movie. But interestingly, it is based off a true story and fairly loosely based off a true story. But one of the main differences between this version of the story and the original is that, or the real thing, is that in the real version of these events, nobody is killed. And then in this version, like, a lot of people are killed, like a lot of Nazis die.
I mean, you couldn't do a movie like this without killing a few Nazis. Like, are there any other bad guys in history that are better to kill off than Nazis? I challenge anyone to come up with an answer for that one. I was going to say the movie plays out like an episode of Badass of the Week, kind of. It's like a movie version. If we had done this, that would have been the movie they made.
It kind of does, right? Like, it really is that where. Yeah. How can we take this true story and just really crank it up to 11?
Yeah.
Which it does. It does that very well.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah, it's a fun ride. I would put Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels up as one of my favorite movies ever made. And, I don't know that this is quite in that same category, but I had fun with it. And, and it's a good opportunity for us to tell this story, the true story of the Special Operations Executive in World War II and Operation Postmaster and some of the people who are portrayed in this movie, because they are really interesting characters. And the story that this is based on is really amazing, and it's true. And it kind of was the beginning of special operations and commando operations, and kind of started military history on the path that led to, like, the SAS and Delta Force and all of these special operations. So it's a really cool story, and we're really looking forward to telling it to you. We're going to take a really quick break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to get into the story of the true story of the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. So stick with us. So the story of Operation Postmaster begins in the summer of 1941, which is early in World War II. And it's kind of the darkest part of World War II. Germany has taken Czechoslovakia. They've overrun Poland. They've overrun France. They defeated the British army at Dunkirk. They're fighting in Russia. They're winning. They've got Italy on their side. Spain is technically neutral, but they are, implicitly allied with Germany. And basically right now, the USSR is getting crushed. London is in the middle of the Blitz, so they're getting bombed nightly by German bombers, laying waste to London, laying waste to other cities in England and the United Kingdom. And things are looking pretty grim for the Allies. It's kind of the darkest moment the darkest summer that they will have throughout the entire war.
Basically, we're all about to be eating Wiener Schnitzel.
Yes.
At that point, right?
I think that's it.
Wiener
Schnitzel
and sauerkraut.
It's sauerkraut, sausages, and black bread.
Yeah, not great.
Which I like, but maybe not all the time.
Yeah, sausage, the black bread, and the sauerkraut, not my thing.
Yes, I was an exchange student to Germany for the summer of 1996. And when I flew out there, I didn't like any of the plane food. So I got there and I was staying with my host family, and my host mother had made a chicken schnitzel. And it was I was so hungry, and it was the best thing I'd ever eaten. And I just ate this monster plate of it. And then from that point on, though, my host family was just oh, this is Americans. They just eat a lot. This is what we've heard about them. They're all fat Americans. So every other meal we would have, she would make me twice as much as everybody else. I'd have this monster plate. And if I didn't eat it all, she'd be oh, you didn't like it? No, I love it. It's great. Thank you, Mrs. Fortenberg. I will eat it. It was kind of awesome, but
generous. That's great.
Yeah. But yes, so things are looking bad for the Allies in the summer of 1941. And they need to do something, right? They're trying to bring in supplies. The US and Canada. Canada is shipping a lot of supplies. Canada in quotation marks. A lot of American supplies are somehow ending up in Canada, and then those are being mixed with some Canadian supplies, and it's all being shipped on Canadian flagged ships to England and the USSR. And because the United States is not in the war yet, they can't officially be sending weapons and ammo and trucks and tanks to the Allies, but they can if they ship it through Canada on Canadian flagged ships. Unfortunately, because Canada is in the war, that means those ships are fair game for German U-boats. German submarines are attacking Allied shipping. They're blowing up ships that are carrying these supplies to England and to the USSR to help them fight the war. In addition to that, England is really on the defensive. They're getting bombed every day, and they really need to find some way to punch back at these submarines and also at mainland Germany. The German forces disrupt them any way they can, right? They need something. They need some kind of win, some kind of way to attack them, because right now they're just kind of turtling up and getting bombed. So, okay.
It's rough.
Yeah, it's rough. Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of England, he decides that he needs to create a special unit that will try to attack German infrastructure behind enemy lines. And that's when we get into the creation of a unit that are known as the Commandos. We've talked about commandos before. We did an episode on Mad Jack Churchill, who was a founding commando. Churchill never quite got it. He would go into combat charging ahead with a sword and screaming the word commando. That was how he did his commando operations, was to play the bagpipes and scream the word commando. That's not what's going to happen on this mission.
little slightly more subtle.
Yeah, Mad Jack's not invited to Operation Postmaster.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have these volunteer soldiers from other units that sign up for the commandos to keep the Germans off balance with special raids behind enemy lines. They end up being pretty successful to the point where Hitler will eventually put out an order called the Commando Order. That's like, any commandos you capture, just execute them as spies on the spot. That's how annoying they get to the Germans.
That feels like the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare 2.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Hitler's order.
Yeah. So in 1941, a commando unit is formed. They're known as Number 62 Commando. It's 55 guys, and they're assigned to the British Special Operations Executive, the SOE, which is a precursor to MI6.
So just to interrupt you, because you were going in an interesting direction, Number 62 Commando, we don't know if there were 61 something before that,
right? Or if they just gave it number 62 in order to like make it sound like there were a lot of units.
Well, that's what the story is behind SEAL Team 6. Was there actually wasn't a SEAL Team 1 through 5 at the time.
Yes.
They started SEAL Team 6 and they were like, we're going to call it that, and that'll make the Soviets think we've got 5 other units of these badasses.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like that. So I don't know for sure.
Could just be the address of their office.
Right, exactly. And a lot of this stuff was secretive, right? So like the Special Operations Executive, like they weren't known to anyone. The existence of the SOE was not known to high-ranking members of the British Army, right? This was secret agents doing secret agent stuff, bribing, sabotage, intercepting transmissions, hunting down enemy spies, assassinating if they have to, lying to whoever they need to get what they need. And this Number 62 Commando was the unit that was assigned to work specifically with the SOE. A lot of these other ones were kind of more combat units, but these guys were a little bit more related to special ops.
Now, question. In the movie, Ian Fleming is a character, and who we've talked about on this show. Is he realistically involved in any of this, or is that just a fun element of the movie?
I'll tell you this, because I was like, when he shows up in the movie and he's like, I'm Ian Fleming, and I was like, oh, they're going to do this. They love to do Ian Fleming. Any spy anything from World War II puts this guy in it. Like Ian Fleming, he was a British naval intelligence officer, and he worked with the SOE. He liaisoned SOE to British naval intelligence. He was a critical member of the SOE. He oversaw Number 30 Commando. He was part of the team working on the Normandy operation. He led intelligence teams in Spain. Ian Fleming, people always want to kind of throw him in there because everybody's like, oh, James Bond. And so when he showed up in the movie, I was like, oh, they're going to do this, I guess. But I looked it up, and yes, he did meet every member of this team. There's not evidence for sure that he was part of the planning operation for it, but he did meet everybody, and he was leading intelligence groups in Spain, and Spain's going to be heavily involved in this operation. So maybe there is like some, there's an entire Wikipedia entry on people who are possibly inspirations for James Bond. There's like 75 people on that list. But 3 of them are the characters that we're going to talk about as main components of this operation. I'm
going to go out on a limb and give this the stamp of boom, factually accurate.
Yes, absolutely.
I use that liberally.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we can say that, like, putting him in the room is not entirely fictional. He might have been there.
Cool.
As much as we know anything about any of this secret agent stuff.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't know who's a good, like, completely anachronistic person we could put in that room.
Ethan Hunt.
Yes, right. Yeah. Although I do intend to make a Mission Impossible reference later.
Okay. Well, great.
The commander of this unit, Number 62 Commando, is Major Gustavus March Phillips. They call him Gus. In the movie, this is Henry Cavill's character. In the movie, they break him out of prison to like give him command of the unit. That didn't happen with Gus March Phillips. It did happen with a guy named Paddy Mayne, who was another founding member of the SAS. This guy, David Sterling, who started the SAS, his best friend or like one of his favorite soldiers was this Irishman named Paddy Mayne, and he had to break that guy out of jail to get him to join the SAS. That's a true story, but it wasn't this guy.
All right, let's come back to that story for another episode, because I want to hear about that.
Yeah. Paddy Mayne is awesome. He was the founding member of the Long Range Desert Patrol. I wrote about him in one of my books. He's awesome. I would love to talk about him on the show in the future. Okay, so for Major March Phillips, he was born in 1908. He joined the Royal Regiment of Artillery. He had a pretty hot temper. He loved cars, but he was supposedly like very calm under fire. He served in India for a while, but he wasn't seeing any combat. So he retired and became a novelist and a journalist. But then when World War II started, he came out of retirement to fight. He actually traveled to France and was part of the Battle of France. He was at Dunkirk, and he may have been a member of Number 7 Commando in the earlier days. Like, commandos were formed in 1940, and so now we're in 1941. We don't know for sure because he was taken off all active duty military rosters and was paid directly by the SOE. And they kind of hid where all the money was coming from. So it's hard to track exactly where he was stationed and when, which is the level of secrecy that the SOE had. He did have a code name. His code name was Agent W01. W because he's operating in West Africa. 0 because literally licensed to kill, like he's combat trained, and then 1 because he's the commander of the unit, of the first guy.
Wait, is that what 0 actually means? Yes. I mean, with this whole license to kill thing, always just like license to kill, it's it's a James Bond movie or whatever.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. The 01 means he, like, W01 means he's like the number 1 combat guy. Like, he's trained in killing. W1 would be for like a spy, more of a spy related guy who has like, he works at the docks and wires messages in, that kind of thing. Okay. So W02 is his friend, Captain Jeffrey Appleyard, who in the movie was portrayed by 2011 Teen Choice Awards winner Alex Pettyfer from Beastly. If you saw Beastly.
I knew I recognized him from somewhere. I was like, I know that guy.
He's from an obscure 2011 young adult Twilight ripoff about Beauty and the Beast. The real Captain Appleyard, he was a champion skier who may have invented water skiing. There's a story that he may have invented water skiing, or that he at least was the first person to bring it to England. He was a champion international water skier, champion international downhill skier, may have invented water skiing. I don't know. He had an engineering degree from Cambridge. Yeah, it's pretty badass.
I invented water skiing.
Yeah, I invented water skiing.
Sure.
He had an engineering degree from Cambridge, so it's possible. And he was a champion skier, so maybe. Him and March Phillips had been friends. They actually shared a foxhole that they dug out of the sand on Dunkirk Beach. And while the British are trying to escape at Dunkirk, they vowed to each other that England would never be humiliated like that again. And so that's kind of their plan. These two guys get together. They're going to run this. They're going to run this unit, and they're going to do some badass secret agent stuff.
I feel like that's a missed opportunity. Spoiler alert, there's a missed opportunity to do that at the beginning of this movie. They're at Dunkirk being like, never, shaking their fist, never again. That was in the script somewhere and they cut it out.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then the third guy that they bring onto the team, like, these two guys are friends, and while they are kind of starting to organize this team, they meet a guy from Denmark named Anders Lassen. Who in the movie he's portrayed by the guy who does Reacher. And Anders Lassen was gigantic in real life. He'd been a member of the Danish Merchant Navy, but he left Denmark when the Germans took over his hometown. So he came to England to try to see if he could just see what he could do to help. He met March Phillips and Appleyard. They got along really well. March Phillips described him as being, quote, good-hearted and good at everything, even if he does dislike discipline, which I thought was cool.
That sounds like the model SOE,
yes.
Operative.
Loose cannon, badass, Anders Lassen, giant.
Dislikes discipline.
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect.
Exactly. He was the real Anders Lassen was a really badass bow hunter. They said that he could shoot 15 arrows in a minute, and that he would, back in Denmark, he would hunt everything from sparrows to stags with a bow and arrow.
It's like Hawkeye.
Right. Yeah. There's no indication that he fired arrows at Germans during the war. That's another Mad Jack Churchill thing. Mad Jack did do that. There's
no indication, but I choose to believe. Okay.
Yes. When asked about it, Anders Lassen said he wouldn't. That was where the sparrows to stags come out. He's like, I've shot everything from sparrows to stags with this. I think if I shot it at a human, I'd have the same effect. Something along those lines, which was pretty badass. So, but still, the only documented person killed with an arrow that it was Mad Jack Churchill so far. But it's entirely possible that Anders Lassen has done it as well. A lot of his files are still classified. I mean, not even that his files are still classified. He just has, like, during the course of his career, he earned 2 military crosses for heroism in battle, and we don't know what either of them were for.
Oh, wow.
So
what's the deal? Why? Any idea why we don't have these juicy government reports?
I think because they were in places the British weren't supposed to be, or missions that we weren't supposed to know about. I don't know.
It's World War II. I think we can put it all out on the table now.
You think, right? You think. Okay. So these guys form the core of Number 62 Commando. And as we're going to see, like, Operation Postmaster is undertaken by like 5 people. And these guys get a mission. And their mission is, you have these German U-boats that I mentioned. They're attacking Allied shipping. It'll be known as the Battle of the Atlantic, because the Canadians, and once the U.S. enters the war, the U.S. will be sending a lot of transport ships. The U.S. is producing a ton of war material, and they need to get it to Europe, but they got to cross the North Atlantic, and the North Atlantic is full of U-boats. And there will be this kind of escalation of the Americans will send more and more ships. The Germans will try to send more and more U-boats. But at this point in the war, we need to start disrupting, or England needs to start disrupting U-boat production. Now, U-boat's a submarine, and Germany does not really have a lot of water access to the North Atlantic without having to go past England, which controls the seas. It stands to reason that these U-boats are going to be based somewhere else. They've taken France, and they've taken a lot of, with taking France at the time had a lot of colonies in Africa. And so those are warm water ports. They're on the equator. They are prime spots to, like, quickly get in and out of the Atlantic. You go out, you shoot down some shipping, you come back, you refuel, you resupply, you go back out again. It's much easier to do that from West Africa than it is from Berlin or Hanover.
Northern Germany, where you have to sail right next by England to
every time
get there. Yeah.
Right. It's going to take you an extra 6 days of sailing through very dangerous waters that are probably mined. They believe that there are U-boat bases there, and some of the information that's being pulled up by these SOE spies indicates that there is. So March Phillips has to organize his team and train them and start to find German U-boat bases in West Africa. He becomes Agent W01. He loves Sir Francis Drake, and he's excited about, like, being able to do some piratey Francis Drake kind of stuff. We haven't done Drake on the show. I've written about him before, but we should do an episode on him in the future too.
Sign me up.
Yeah. So Major Mark Phillips, he organizes and trains his unit. He drills them at sea and at land in shooting and sailing, getting in and out of boats, amphibious assaults, naval operations, boarding enemy ships. He trains them pretty much exclusively, all day, every day for 6 weeks straight. And this is still during the Blitz. So they have no heating, no air conditioning. There are no lights. They got to turn all the lights off at night because it's commandos are being trained here. That is a spot for the Germans to bomb. So they're operating in these various locations, but it's like, it's cold and they're being bombed and there's no lights and there's no, it's grueling. It's very difficult training. You train all day, until you can't walk anymore. And then you have to sleep on like a concrete floor in the cold.
But I bet it provides good motivation. You're like,
Yes.
this sucks.
Yeah.
Let's do something about this.
Yes.
So
I could see that.
If they were just like training, in Jamaica, having some rum on the beach, they might not be so motivated.
No, that's very true. So after 6 weeks, on August 9th, 1941, Major Gus March Phillips and 5 other guys leave southern England aboard a ship called the Maid Honor. It's a 70-foot like fishing boat, 3 masts, like a sailing ship. It was a cup-winning sailing yacht, but they've kind of disguised it as a fishing boat. It looks pretty innocuous, except that it has
a wooden boat. It's like a wooden sailing boat.
Wooden sailing
boat. This thing
boat.
Doesn't have cannons on it.
It does, but they hid them in there.
Oh, okay, good.
they built a dummy deck house, and they put two 30-millimeter mortars and 2 heavy machine guns in there.
All right. They retrofitted it.
Yes, yeah. It looks like a boring fishing boat, and they only roll like a real pirate. They only roll those out when they really need them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just a fishing boat from the 20s. So it takes them, they sail it for 41 days, 3,000 miles south to Sierra Leone in West Africa, which is a feat by itself. For 5 guys to sail a ship for 41 days is like not an easy thing. You have to have some understanding of that is dangerous.
Yeah, a lot of crossword puzzles, probably.
Yes. So they get to Sierra Leone. They link up with the team. So Lassen and March Phillips are on that ship. Appleyard has gone down earlier to scout the area. They all link up on the boat, and they start sailing around up and down these rivers, these little inlets, caves. They're looking for German U-boat bases. And on land, the SOE is doing the same thing. They're talking to German agents. They're intercepting radio communications. They're trying to find these bases. We got to find these bases and knock them out. Well, eventually they find one. It's a big refueling and resupply area, and it's on an island called Fernando Po. It's off the coast of Guinea and Nigeria in West Africa. And there's 3 ships in the harbor. The Italian Duchessa d'Aosta, the German tug Licombai, and a big barge called Burundi. And these are, the shipping manifests are weapons and supplies and things that you need to operate U-boats.
Yeah, the movie made it all about some sort of air filter.
Right. So I couldn't find anything about that, but
yeah,
it doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean I just missed it, but this is U-boat stuff, and we need to knock it out. But here's a little problem, is that Spain, I think I mentioned earlier, is neutral. They have a fascist dictator who was put in power thanks to help from the Nazis and the Italians. But and we talked about Franco actually a little bit in our bonus episode on the history of the Barcelona-Real Madrid rivalry. But Spain is not a member of the war. They're not in this. They're neutral officially. So angering them brings them into the war. It definitely causes an international incident if you have British soldiers shooting Spanish people or attacking even German ships in a Spanish harbor, which is supposed to be neutral. Okay.
This is a situation where they have to tread lightly.
Yes.
And it's one of those where they always tell spies, if you get like killed or captured, we'll deny all involvement. It's one of those sort of like, yeah, we don't know those guys.
Yeah, exactly. It is Mission Impossible, right? Mission Impossible. You've got your one ship, right? You've got your one little sailing ship. They have 3 large vessels crewed by somewhere around 30 guys in an enemy harbor that's full of naval artillery, anti-aircraft guns. It's crawling with Spanish troops, German troops, and Italian troops. All 3 ships have radios that they can use to call for help from any number of air, naval, or land assets. Being discovered not only puts you under immediate danger of being shot to death, but it also creates an international incident and possibly brings a neutral country into World War II on the side of the Nazis. And on top of that, the British government does not officially approve of this operation because that would be a declaration of war on Spain. And on top of that, a lot of the high-ranking members of the British government, including the governor of this area and like the heads of the Admiralty Board, they actively oppose this operation when it's presented to them that like we're going to steal these boats or we're going to blow up these boats. They are like, absolutely not. It's too risky. So Churchill and the SOE say, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they say, okay, we're doing it. We're going to go, green light. But if you or a member of your team are caught or killed, your government will disavow all knowledge of your existence. So
perfect.
Major Gus March Phillips, Captain Jeffrey Appleyard, and Anders Lassen are commando pirates.
Nice. I mean, could you find anything better that embodies badass of the week than commandos and pirates?
Commando pirates with bows and arrows.
Yeah, with bows and arrows. Yeah, perfect. Killing Nazis.
Yep.
Someone should make a movie out of this.
They should. Well, I think this is a good spot to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to see some commando pirates in action. All right, welcome back. It is the go time for Operation Postmaster. So in January 1942, the green light officially comes down from the Foreign Office to undertake this mission. The SOE, the British Special Operations Executive, they have spies in town in Fernando Po. They are pretending to be, merchants or, shipping moguls, that kind of thing. They are even like dock hands and ship workers. They get intel on all three ships in the harbor, learn the layouts of the ship, the crew, what they like, when's their shift change, that kind of stuff. And they have to find a way to weaken the ship so they can be captured. So what do? They do something that we saw in our Klondike Joe Boyle episode. They arrange a big party for all the German and Italian officers. The SOE decides we're going to throw this big, they rent out like an entire restaurant. They fill it with like booze and food. And they say, hey, come on, you guys are all invited. We're going to have a big party. I'm picturing Casablanca here.
It's very Casablanca. Mm-hmm. It's also like hard to believe that, people are falling for this.
It worked. It worked. The entire officer crew, 14 Italians and 3 Germans, they all go to this party. And on January 14th, 1942, around midnight, under the cover of darkness, while all of these officers are at the party, the SOE launches Operation Postmaster. So 2 Nigerian flagged tugboats, they were a gift from the governor of Nigeria. They enter the harbor at Santa Isabel on Fernando Po. The Germans have a tugboat and the Italians have this big barge and this big merchant ship. The German tugboat shines a light at the lead tugboat, and there's only 2 guys standing on deck. It's Appleyard and March Phillips, and they just kind of wave back or try to look innocuous enough because on the back, hey, what's up? Hey, guten Nacht.
Don't mind us.
Because on the other side of that ship, there's 38 commandos undoing folding kayaks and lowering them into the water. So kayaks, like two-person kayaks, they're deploying them out. They're lowering them out the side of these tugboat ships, and the tugs get a little closer, and these kayaks start to set sail start to row out towards these 3 ships. Now, the lead one, the most dangerous one, is the Duchessa d'Aosta. It's the big merchant ship, the big Italian merchant ship. It has the most powerful radio. It's, the most heavily crewed. So, of course, they have to send Anders Lassen to be the first guy up there.
It's because they're like guards on it. There's people with guns.
Yep. There's guards. There's a whole lot of guards. People. Yes, there's armed guards with guns on the ship. Anders Lassen is the first guy up there, and he climbs over onto the deck in the middle of the night. He's got a knife between his teeth. He's got his submachine gun. He jumps up there. He looks at these first 2 guards that are on the night watch. The guards look at him, and they jump overboard into the water.
See, that feels, it's now I'm like, well, why wasn't that in the movie? Like,
they look at him and then jump overboard and swim away.
It would have been unbelievable. It would have been too comical for the movie.
Yeah, it would have made you laugh, right? It wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so these groups of canoes, they get up there and it's just a bunch of commandos in full war gear up against these sailing vessels. Some of these guys on these ships are armed. Some of them are not. Some of them are soldiers. Some of them are not. They fan out and they just kind of take these boats by overwhelming force. So, I was talking to a guy who was in the DEA once, and he was telling me something. He was like, in the movies or in TV or whatever, when it's like think like the movie Hackers, where like the kid like hacks some stuff, but then when they go to get him, there's 75 guys sticking guns in his face. Like, would they go after like a small time drug dealer? They send 30 SWAT team members with assault rifles in there to wake him up.
Yeah.
And the idea
show of
is
force.
Overwhelming force is what he called it. Whereas like, if you're facing 2 cops, you think, maybe I can draw my gun and shoot it fast enough. If you're facing 20 cops, the thought does not even cross your mind to resist. Like, I'm dead, you just surrender. And so that's kind of how they take these boats, but they take all 3 of them. They do not send off a radio signal. They capture all 3 of these boats cleanly. They march the crews into guarded areas where they can't access radio. They start putting plastic explosive on the chain that goes from the ship to its anchor. There's not going to be time to raise the anchors because they're big and loud and heavy. It'll make noise. It'll take too long. Can't do it. We're going to blow the anchor chain.
Just a quick little explosion.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. So they plant C4 or plastic explosive on all 3 of these anchor chains. They drive those 2 tugboats right up to the 3 ships. So 2 of these ships are moored together. So one ship takes 2, the other tugboat takes the big one, and they link them up. And so once everything's kind of linked up, you've got the cruiser subdued, the tugboats are hitched up, everything's ready to go. The plastic explosive has been laid. They push the button, they blow the plastic explosives, and then they immediately start hauling these boats out of the harbor.
So the pirate commandos are pulling off a heist.
They're pulling off a heist, and it's going smoothly so far. The explosions, though, are loud, and the people in town hear it, and the guards in town hear it. And what do they think? They think we are being airstriked. So they start shooting all of their anti-aircraft machine guns and cannons up into the sky, thinking that whatever that explosion was, it must have come from the air, because there's no way it was a bunch of maniacs sailing a boat into our harbor who are currently stealing. So these guys are currently stealing these boats out from under the noses of the Germans and the Italians and the Spanish. They're literally dragging them out of the harbor, and they're all shooting their guns up in the air.
That's hilarious.
It's great. And so they make it out. It's 30 minutes from when they enter the harbor to when they leave the harbor. They don't have to kill anybody in the process. They don't lose anybody in the process. They steal all 3 ships. Every member of that crew that was on those ships is a prisoner now that they can interrogate for information if they need to. And they sail out. And, I said there was 15 Italian officers and 2 German officers at that party. When it finally becomes clear what happened, the lead German captain, the tugboat captain, he's a guy named Specht, and he figures out what happened, and he puts it together. It's like, that had to be the British. But he's at this party, he's been drinking, so he drunkenly storms into the British consulate on Fernando Po and starts screaming and yelling at them about what they did. Some British officer gets up, or a British official gets up, and is trying to like calm him down. So Captain Specht, he punches the...
You just know the British calming him down. Yeah, like, so very patronizingly.
Yes, absolutely. Well, he was quite upset.
Yeah. Listen, chap, would you like some tea?
Yeah, so Specht doesn't like it. He responds by punching that British official in the face. So
we got combat now.
We have combat. It's the first casualty of the battle, right? Is that guy gets punched in the face and knocked down. And there's this amazing report that was told by somebody who was there. And so what happens immediately following this? The drunken officer comes in there. He's making a bunch of ruckus. He punches this official. some guy who was only identified as Agent W51 stands up, and according to the report, he, quote, put some heavy north of Scotland stuff on him. And just so whatever you take that to mean, he pummels this Captain Spinks. Listen, unconscious.
I've been north of Scotland. It gets heavy up there. All right. So
yes. Yeah.
Whatever that is, that guy wasn't getting back up.
Yeah, he was the only wounded in battle in the battle. But Agent W51, whoever he is, he lays this Captain Spaked out, and that's it. There's no other injuries to anybody on either other side. They stuck in there. They ganked the 3 ships, pulled it out right from under their noses. Super heist. After they get out of the harbor, the next morning they're intercepted by a British Royal Navy corvette that just happened to be out there. We came across this stolen stuff, but I don't know who did it. But we're going to take it off your hands. So they steal these ships, and when the men of Number 62 Commando arrive in Lagos, Nigeria, the governor, the guy who had lent them those tugboats, he's standing on the end of the dock holding whiskey sodas, just cheering them as they pull in. I mean, got a drink ready for him.
That's how we all like to be greeted when we arrive in port.
Yes.
With a whiskey soda.
Yes, exactly. I should have made one for the during the recording.
You're drinking. What are you drinking? A Modelo?
Some Modelo. Yeah, this is a leftover from Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah, I was going to say that's from our last episode.
But yeah, the interestingly, like, nobody knew what happened after this. So for the first couple of weeks after the battle, after this heist, nobody knew who it was. Was it the French? Was it the British? Who did this? Spain was all upset. They called it an intolerable attack on their sovereignty, but they couldn't really. It was pirates. I don't know. Pirates came and stole these. I don't know who they were. Weren't our guys.
What did they do with them? They sailed them out of the port, and then what?
So the most important bit is they're denying all of the cargo to the Germans. So sure. The Germans don't get to use that stuff to resupply. The British can use it. The British can look through their logbooks, look through their radios, try to.
Did they just scuttle the ships after rifling through their stuff?
No, they convert them.
Oh, they took them home.
They put British flags on them. Yeah,
just little paint job and.
Yep. That's it. They
got a new pink slip.
Yep, that's it. That's it. They put British flags on them, and they're valuable for intel. The prisoners were valuable for intel. It was good to deny them the goods, and also now we have 3 new ships for our fleet.
You think someone was like, "Hey, but my ship, it's over there. It's got that. It's got the Union Jack flying above it."
Pretty sure that's my ship. No. Your ship was called this. We painted over. They rename them.
Yeah.
And then after that they get back, and Lassen, he gains a commission. He becomes a lieutenant. Appleyard gets a military cross. He'd already received one for an earlier commando operation, so it's his second one. And Gus March Phillips, he earns the Distinguished Service Order, which is basically one step below the Victoria Cross, like the second highest award for bravery they have. He gets back to town and he marries an actress named Marjorie Stewart, who is a character in the movie. We don't know for sure if Marjorie Stewart we know she was a British actress, but we don't know if she was SOE or not. There is some indication that she may have been, and that's where he met her. There's also a story about he got back and was having this big party and was taking the elevator up to his hotel room, and she was in the elevator with him, and that's how they met. I've heard both stories, but that's SOE for you, right?
Yeah. I'm going with the movie version. It's more fun.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah, I prefer it. And I guess though in that version, she's the one who puts the north of Scotland stuff on
maybe.
But yeah, I mean, and most importantly, this raid, people weren't sold on SOE or special operations in general. You have these very, very British, very proper military guys, and pirate raids and secret missions. That's not army stuff. That's sneaky stuff. We face our enemy head on.
I mean, I think it's worth knowing, like, this is the 1940s. It's less than 100 years ago. I mean, Civil War being my reference, where we just literally just had guys march at each other in a line and shooting.
Yeah.
That's what war, obviously there was some stuff going on. They were kind of like spies, but like irregular warfare, is still very much evolving.
Yes. So this is kind of the first spy raids kind of stuff, right? And even in World War I, that's how they were fighting. It just worked out really, really poorly for them. They still marched in lines and ran at machine guns. It didn't work out. But so this kind of proved the value of special operations and kind of paves the way for all of this other stuff that follows. I guess I should take a minute and kind of tie off the stories of some of these characters, because after Operation Postmaster, they really start to ramp up special operations. Gus March Phillips, he leads a few more pretty intense raids. He's attacking bases in France. There's an operation where he attacks a lighthouse off the French coast, captures it without firing a shot. He captures the defenders while they're still in their pajamas, and captures their logbooks, blows up the lighthouse. But he is going to be killed in action in September of 1942. He and his guys are trying to infiltrate. They're trying to attack a German base in a place called Saint-Honorine-de-Perthes on the French northern coast. But their ship landed in the wrong spot, and they were ambushed by a patrol. They landed. They tried to do their mission. They were in the wrong place. They're going back to their boats. They get attacked while they're going back to their boats. German machine guns sink their kayaks while they're trying to get out, and he's shot while trying to swim for shore. The place where he died would later be famous as Omaha Beach. So he might have been among the first Allies killed on Omaha Beach.
Okay. Sounds about right for him.
Yeah. Jeffrey Appleyard, he gets promoted to major, takes over number 62 Commando after Gus March Phillips's death. They fold the 62 Commando into the 2nd SAS Regiment once the SAS is invented or created. He's the second in command of 2nd SAS. And he receives 3 distinguished service orders for heroism, leading as the second in command of the SAS, the 2nd SAS. There's a joke that when he went to receive his 3rd distinguished service order, he walked up to King George King George walked up to him to give him the medal and said, "Oh, what, you again?" But Appleyard doesn't survive the war either. He dies over Sicily during a mission. It was an airdrop. And his aircraft just was disappeared over the Mediterranean, and that was it. Nobody knows, it went down over the Mediterranean. Lassen continues on. He serves in the Special Boat Service. He fights in North Africa, Crete, Yugoslavia, Greece. He gets 2 military crosses. He leads a raid on Santorini, like the tourist destination in Greece. He takes 19 SBS commandos, and they take out like 60 Germans and blow up their base. The Germans called the battle Lassen's Bloodbath.
Oh, that's a good title.
That's a good title, yeah. But Lassen is also not going to survive the war. He's killed in action in April of 1945 while fighting in Italy. He was leading a patrol of 18 guys to attack an Italian and German base, but he came under fire from machine gun nests. He charges them with his rifle and grenades. He takes out 2 German machine gun bunkers, kills 8 Germans, disables 3 machine guns. The last bunker surrenders to him. He goes to accept their surrender, and they shoot him.
Oh, now come on, that's bullshit.
While he was trying to take them prisoner. Yeah. He is posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, which is the British Medal of Honor. And he is the only person in history who was not a member of the British Commonwealth to receive the Victoria Cross.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool. Yeah. So that's it. That's the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. They had this amazing Operation Postmaster. I hope it's not too depressing that they all die afterwards, but
I mean, it feels very, for who these guys were and their approach to the war. It's not surprising. It would be far more shocking if any of them survived what they were doing.
Right. I mean, they're all balls to the wall all the time. They're receiving all of these medals for just doing these over the top heroic things. When you're behind enemy lines with a dozen guys and the enemy's shooting at you from every angle. These guys decided to run into the machine guns, right, rather than away from them. That's how they operated. That's how they were so successful at what they did. But yeah, that also, is a pitfall of that. So that's the story. If you guys want to learn more about this, Brian Lett has a couple of good books on the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. The movies is loosely based off Damian Lewis's book, which is also very good. And I also really liked the descriptions of these stories from Philip Warner's Secret Forces of World War II and The Daring Dozen by Gavin Mortimer. So those are some books that you can check out if you want to keep, learn more about these guys and about the SOE, because there's not time to cover all of it here.
And yeah, I think you said, and the movie, if you want to,
and the movie,
if you want the Badass of the Week abbreviated 2-hour version yes. starring Henry Cavill.
Henry, if you want to watch Superman mow down Germans with a machine gun,
sign me up.
That's the movie. Yeah. Significantly more people die in the Fernando Poe raid in Operation Postmaster on the movie version than they do in the actual version. But I think both versions are badass.
Yep.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Please do like and subscribe if you are enjoying the show. We really do appreciate it. And we will see you on the next one.
Stay badass.
Badass of the Week is an iHeartRadio podcast produced by High Five Content. Executive producers are Andrew Jacobs, me, Pat Larish, and my co-host, Ben Thompson. Writing is by me and Ben. Story editing is by Ian Jacobs, Brandon Phibbs. Mixing and music and sound design is by Jude Brewer. Special thanks to Noel Brown at iHeart. Badass of the Week is based on the website badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions, ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like the podcast, subscribe, follow, listen, and tell your friends and your enemies if you want, as we'll be back next week with another one. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.